Hey, so first of all, apologies that I wasn't right up here ready to start on time, but man, how about that band? I was so lost in what they were doing that I was like, really? There's not one more song? Come on, don't shortchange us. Good evening and welcome. I'm a blood-bought child of the Most High King. I struggle with pride. Pride led me to alcoholism, and my name is Terry. And I just want to thank you tonight for being my forever family, for being a place where I can live in open, honest, transparent, and authentic relationship, where I can come to a place that's safe and I can share. And tonight might get a little wild and woolly for me, because, and I'll explain why here in a minute, but we're going to kind of dive in and we're going to talk about denial. And I mean, it's a key step to our recovery, right? Like, we have to get through, we have to stop denial in order to actually move into our recovery journey, right? And if we stay in denial, then we can't move, right? So it's a huge component. It's like, that's why it's number one in the steps, right? Like, we don't make amends and then step out of denial. We have to step out of denial. And so we're going to kind of unpack some things tonight, and we'll see how the Holy Spirit works. So hang on, here we go. So in step number one, it says that we admitted we were powerless over our addictions and compulsive behaviors, that our lives had become unmanageable, right? And so there's an action in there, right? We admitted. We have to do the something, right? We have to make the admission. And before we really jump in and start unpacking this whole thing about denial, there's a few foundational observations or beliefs that I want to make and I want to share with you that I think are kind of key to understanding what denial is and why we hang out in denial for so long, and then also how we do denial. So the number one, okay? So when I think about the truth, right, the truth, for me, the truth happens when my beliefs collide with reality, right? So I have a belief set, and I'm happy-go-lucky doing my thing, but I can be living a life of fiction, right, in that belief. But when that fiction that I'm living collides with reality, I'm going to have to reassess my beliefs if I'm going to live in the truth, if I'm going to confront the truth, if I'm going to deal with the truth, right? Otherwise, I'm going to run away, okay? Belief number two of mine. It is my belief that when we think about how we operate as human beings, that first of all, we start out with beliefs, okay? So what we believe, the fundamental things that we believe at our core, what we believe affects how we think, okay? How we think affects how we feel. How we feel affects how we behave, or what we do. So behave, think, feel, do, right? We won't change what we do until we feel differently. Make sense, right? So, and we won't feel differently until we think about ourselves differently, and we won't think about ourselves differently until we understand that there's either a truth or a lie happening in our belief system. Make sense? Okay? Okay. Third thing that I believe. Tonight, as we talk about denial, there are just two deals on the table. There's two options. There's either the truth or there's denial. Okay? It is impossible to have both happening at the same time. You can't be actively in denial living in the truth, right? It just does not work, okay? Fundamentally, it is false, okay? So, to kind of give that some traction, or to kind of make that, put some wheels on that, I guess, or put a face on that. So my belief, okay? I put together a message for tonight that in my belief was amazing, because that's what I do. I do amazing things, right? And not only do I do amazing things in my belief system, step number one, it's denial. I got this, right? So in December, when Chris asked me if I would do this, I said, sure thing. And then I promptly, all of December, because it's denial. I got this, right? And then January 13, 14, 15, and I'm still, because it's denial. I got this. But I finally sit down and I put together this great message that I have, right? And in my belief, it's going to be amazing. And so I came in today to practice, and the group that I practiced in front of, I finished, and to my surprise, there was no cheering. They didn't jump out of their seats with inspiration and motivation. They were pretty much like, meh, blah. And I was like, what? I'm not sure, I'm all about what? And then they started giving me, some honest criticism about what was happening, and I was like, And so my belief met reality in a very dramatic fashion. And the truth was, what I had prepared sucked it up. And now, I got two choices. I either confront that truth, and I process it, and I do something, or they don't even know what they're talking about. Who do they think they are? I only do amazing things, right? And so I step right into denial, and I don't have to live in the truth. But as I step into that denial and I say, they don't even know what they're talking about, what do you think that might do to our relationship? What do you think that might do to our relationship? Hey, you know what? What I choose to do, it doesn't have any impact on anyone else. Right? Except the truth is that if I come up here with less than my best, that has an impact on you. It has an impact on me. And because of this particular position, it has an impact on us. Right? Give you another example. So, most of my life, I was a fat kid. But my belief was that I was my grandpa's favorite football player because I was that guy, right? As I got older, I wasn't a fat guy. I was a man's man. I was beefy and stocky, and I was masculine, right? When I got married to Cindy, she would occasionally, and by occasionally I mean frequently, let me know that her concern was that I was going to die early and leave her a widow because I was overweight, my blood pressure was high, and I was doing absolutely nothing to take care of myself. And why wasn't I doing that? Because it wasn't a problem. I've got no problem. I'm just a big guy, right? Went to the doctor in November 29th last year. And I'm at the doctor's office, and we're having our conversation. It's like my 50,000-mile checkup or whatever. And I was supposed to start my stopwatch, too, so I didn't go over time. Wait, come back to that in just a second. So, I have an app where when the doctor does the report, I can go in and I can look at my app and I can see what the report says and my blood results and all that kind of stuff, right? And so one night I'm laying in bed and Cindy's sound asleep and I'm in the dark of the night, right? And I'm in my belief system that I'm okay, right? And I open that app up and I'm looking through the charting that she did and she wrote, obese. My belief collided with reality, and I either live in denial or I change, right? So I changed my belief system. I realized that I was gonna die from the lifestyle that I was living and the way that I was eating, and I changed. I changed my belief. I changed the way that I thought about how I do food. I changed how I feel about food, and now I change how I eat, right? And for some of you that might resonate, but let me also tell you, that was the same process that I had with alcohol, right? I didn't have a problem for the longest time. You had a problem with my drinking. I didn't have a problem. She had a problem with my drinking. It wasn't my problem, right? If she would get herself straightened out, we could get along in life a whole lot better. So, this is how we kind of conceptualize and blow up this thing about denial, right? And that's how we get into it. Beliefs, thinking, feeling, behaving. So, we have to, I think, before we leave tonight, really understand what denial is. Like, there's one of the questions in the step study that says, like, what are you in denial about? And every time we're in a step study, people laugh and say, well, if I knew what I was in denial about, I wouldn't be in denial about it, right? But that is funny on one level, but it's patently false on the other level, right? Because for us to be in denial, we have to know, right? Denial is I'm going to say this I'm going to read it so I get it right? Denial is willful. It's when you consciously are aware of a problem or an issue and you consciously ignore it, evade it, run away from it. So it's not that if I knew what I was in denial about, I wouldn't be in denial. Not true. You know that's why you're in denial. You're actively choosing. You actively know what you're in denial about. So denial then is also a tool or a strategy that allows us to avoid testing our beliefs in the really real world, right? So I can protect my belief system from colliding with reality if I stay in denial. My belief is never tested. But when I roll my belief out into the reality or the really real world, now there's a chance that it's going to collide, and there's not a chance, it is absolutely going to collide with reality, and I'm either going to find out that I'm living in the truth or I'm living in fiction. And that's all there is. Remember we said that earlier. There's either truth or fiction, one or the other, truth or denial, okay? So, why do we do denial? Next, if you're taking notes, why do we do denial? I'm a teacher, right? So I kind of do outlines, right? But why do you do denial? Why do we do denial? We choose denial over the truth. We choose denial, again, active. We choose denial over the truth because, number one, the prospect of changing our beliefs to align with reality seems too hard. It's just going to be way too hard. Too much time, too much investment. Just too hard. We choose denial over the truth because there may be too much change required. Think about all the changes that I have to make if I'm going to step out. Like, just let me go back to my food example, right? I had to change how I ate. Okay, well, easy, but not. I had to change how I put groceries in my house. I had to change how I went to the grocery store. I had to change how I interacted with all of my friends who weren't making the same change. Right? The change is too hard. It's easier to just deny that I have the issue and just sit here and die from obesity. Right? We choose denial over the truth because there's too much at risk. Too much at risk. What might I lose that I'm not prepared to lose? What might I be asked to give up that I'm afraid of giving up? Too much risk. I'll live in my denial. We choose denial over the truth because it's comfortable. It's just plain out, flat out comfortable. Right? I like what I know. It's safe to be where I know. And so it's just comfortable. And I get that in my denial, there might be a mess. There is a mess. But here's the thing. It's my mess. I know it, I understand it, I get it. It's warm, it's comfortable, and it's mine. If you think about that for just a second, though, right? Anybody besides the Brownlees do babies? Sorry. You take a baby and does its business in its diaper, right? It's warm, it's comfortable, it's theirs. But if they sat in it too long, what happens? You get a diaper rash, they get sick, it gets messy, it gets uncomfortable, right? It does get uncomfortable, it gets painful. But at least it's mine. It's my stink, I know it, I'm familiar with it. And so it's easier just to sit here than run the risk of the change. Right? We choose denial over the truth because we are simply too stubborn, too childish, and too immature. So we just got back from our many miles of Merry Christmas, and we spent some time in Lincoln with our grandsons, a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. So we'd meet them every day. We'd go to their apartment and say, okay, who wants to go on an adventure, right? And boy, let me just tell you, the two of them were wound up about adventure, because adventure, when I say adventure, I mean we're going to go do something fun, right? So I want to do adventure. And the little 3-year-old's like, I adventure. He's got these, like, it's amazing, right? But here's the thing. I would say, okay, let's go. Finn, you got to put your shoes on. No, I don't want to put my shoes on. Well, you can't do the adventure if you don't put your shoes on. I don't want to put my shoes on. And just stand there and pout, right? So he can't access the thing that he wants to access because of his stubbornness and his immaturity and his childish, because he wants to not have to do it in his shoes. But you got to do the thing to get to the thing, right? We admitted we were powerless so that we could access the freedom that's promised to us. You got to do the thing to get to the thing. Now, the 5-year-old, who's a little more mature and a little less childish, I'd say who wants to do adventure, he was shoes on, coat on, standing at the door, let's go, because he knew that there was something great on the other side. So for us to get to this place where we're able to admit that we're powerless and step out of our denial, we have to be willing to do the thing, to get to the thing, so that we can enjoy the freedom that's promised on the other side. We have to do that. And that's a sign not only of our physical age maturity, it's a sign of our recovery maturity, it's a sign of our spiritual maturity. Because we start to chase the thing that we believe in, which is the promise that God gave us. And so if we believe it's true, then downstream over here, our behavior is going to be such that, of course, we're going to chase it full throttle. But if we don't believe it, then we're not going to chase it. If we believe it half-heartedly, our chase is going to be half-hearted. And it's going to show up in our Christian walk. It's going to show up in our recovery life. But to me, the most obvious place that it's going to show up is right smack dab in the middle of all of your relationships. And I say that because it showed up in the middle of all of my relationships. And that's just how that works. All right? Okay, so we must face our issues and admit our denial. God says in Jeremiah 6:14, you can't heal a wound by saying it's not there. Can't do it, right? I don't have an issue doesn't get rid of the issue. We have to do something, and the first thing is to admit, right? So, let's talk about denial. The elephant in the living room, the 800-pound gorilla in the room, we have lots of ways of thinking about how we word picture that and all of that. Celebrate Recovery, of course, gives us an acrostic, so we're going to jump into that acrostic real quick. And if we could have the first letter, Rodney, D. Disables our feelings. I'm not going to read the scriptures tonight. I'm going to let you read them, but I'm just going to, because we have a lot to do tonight, and the rodeo ride is still coming. Disables our feelings. So, in order to get to the change, we have to be able to feel our feelings. But we short-circuit that if we don't work on our beliefs, right? If we don't step out of denial and allow our thinking to change so that our feelings can change, so that our behaviors can change. E, energy lost. So when we think about what we do when we're in denial, we do everything to protect our secret, right? To protect our issue so that it doesn't go away. To protect. But if you do that long enough, you know that you can't sustain it, right? And in not being able to sustain it, I worry. Worry causes anxiety. Anxiety is nothing more than wasted energy, right? Wasted energy attempting to preserve, unprotect a lie that keeps me from the thing that I say I really want, right? N, negates growth. I'll just use the example of the diaper again. We just sit there. We just stagnate in our own mess, right? Until we have a diaper rash of our own, if you apply that in a metaphorical kind of way, right? I, it isolates us from God. Simply put, sin is isolation, right? Sin isolates us and separates us from God. And by denying our problems, we create this vicious cycle of shame and guilt, right? So we deny our problem, shame and guilt, which means to feel better, I have to go deeper into my issue, which means I have to deny it more vehemently, more strongly. I have to make up more lies to protect it, which means I feel more shame and guilt, which drives me deeper, and you see how the circle goes on and on and on and spirals me down, right, until I am a hot mess and I explode all over everybody. Okay? A, it alienates us from our relationships. So, denial is really deceptive and crafty in making us think that we're getting away with it, right? Like, oh yeah, I'm getting, nobody knows. But the thing is that everybody knows, right? We don't acknowledge that. So we believe, right? We believe that nobody knows, right? But we have this inkling, and so we live under the constant threat. Think about that word for just a minute. The constant threat of exposure. Kicks us back to anxiety, but we also live under the constant threat of exposure that we're going to be discovered. So what do? We break off relationships. We pull out of relationships. We disengage from relationships. We hide from the people that care about us most so that we can't be discovered. Right? So that our thing can't be discovered. So we can live in denial. Interestingly enough, though, our isolation protects our secret, but in the end, we get no relief, and in fact, we get just the opposite of relief. Right? So we alienate our relationships under the mantra that we're going to feel better, get better relationships, but it doesn't work out. And then finally, L, lengthens the pain. So all that denial does is allow us to fester, our pain to fester and to grow. It extends the hurt, and it multiplies the problems. When we step out of denial, finally we can meet God where he wants us to be, and we can begin to heal, right? But the longer we stay in denial, the longer we continue the issue, right? I mean, it just makes sense, right? Because we can't be in denial and in truth at the same time. Right? So the longer we're in denial, the longer we're out of truth. And being out of truth is what causes us pain. Broken relationship, heartache, chaos, all that stuff, right? So we have to step out of that. Okay, so if I could get a couple of folks. I have handouts. Again, I'm a teacher, right? So there should be way more than plenty here, but I need them back for tomorrow. So if you bring them back. So we talked about what is denial. We talked about why do we do denial. So let's talk now about how does denial happen? How do we recognize it? Okay, so the how of denial. And so we're going to call this tonight the red flags of denial, or denial patterns and language. So, Rodney, can I just get that first slide that says denial patterns and language? Right, okay. Okay, so remember my big introduction tonight about how I came in and I practiced and it all sucked it up hard and I had to do some adjusting. So one of the things that I did was, man, I just, on this handout, I was going to read the bold letter and then read the kind of the description, and the folks said, it's not going to work. You're going to have to share things, and you're going to have to. I'm like, I don't want to. But I know that I got it. And so I was working through that in my head, and man, the Spirit said to me, there's something on this sheet. So on this sheet I say, what are your denial patterns? So we're going to go through them, and you can make check marks by them and all of that. And I ask you this question: are you willing to do a fearless inventory of your behaviors and language? And so, confession, first of all, I was going to ask you to do that, but I wasn't. I was just going to fly under the radar, read the bold things and the little descriptions, right? And then I had this other thing ready. Are you ready to take a huge leap and ask others to identify your denial traits? And I was going to tell you how to be careful about that and how it's scary and it's worrisome, but you should do it and you need to do it, and it's going to help you break out of your denial. It's going to help you get into your recovery. And God said, yeah, you need to do that. And I was like, what do you mean? And so he made me, I'm blaming him now. He made me ask Cindy to come up here tonight, and we're going to go through this stuff together. And here's the thing that you need to know. I don't know where this is going to go, because I didn't know I was doing this till 5:30 tonight when God yelled at me. And so I have some things that I'm going to share that are reminiscent of these red flags that I recognize in my life. And I've asked Cindy to speak into that as well, right? And if it is, I don't know when she's going to speak, because I don't know that she said, I don't know, we didn't practice, right? So I'm going to say one of these words, and I'm going to start to talk about it, and if Cindy feels like there's something she wants to jump in on, she's just going to jump in. I've invited her to do that. She's not being rude. She's not snowplowing me or steamrolling me or any of those kinds of things. It's just that I didn't know else how to do this, didn't know how else to do this, because we haven't obviously practiced it, right? So it could get a little wild, could get a little woolly. I might cry before it's done. I don't know. We'll see. The one clear over there by the flag. So when we talk about the red flags of denial patterns and denial language, what I wanted to do was to provide you some things to look for and ways to name those. And I guess if you've been asked, or if you get asked to speak into someone else's life, remember that your job in that is to just share with them your observations, to share with them the truth. Your job is not to be their Holy Spirit, to fix it for them, to correct it. We don't do that in Celebrate Recovery, right? We share experience, hope, and strength, and in accountability. We share observations when we're asked, but it's still not our job to fix. And so that's how we do life together anyway. So this is stuff that we do in our relationship. We just usually don't do it in such a public kind of forum. So I don't know what'll happen, but here we go. So denial patterns. One thing that we do in denial is avoidance. So for me, a couple of options for me in avoidance. One is to just disappear, right? So for many issues that we have had in our relationship that I didn't want to deal with or didn't want to confront, when they were blowing up and at their worst, I would just get in my vehicle and drive away, and I would be gone for just long periods of time, right? Until she got herself squared away, and then we could because that's what we do in denial, right? It's her problem, not my problem, right? So I'm just removing myself from the situation until she can get her crap together, and then we can actually work on the problem, right? The other thing that we do in avoidance is we avoid talking about it no matter the cost, right? We'll talk about anything else. We'll go down any other road, but you're not going to touch my secret, right? And we can do that in a lot of ways, but for me, the most frustrating for my wife is that I do the humor thing, right? Like I make light of the situation, I joke about it, I make fun of it, but I don't deal with it, and I avoid it through, and I'll just put this out there too, many times it's pretty sarcastic, pretty hurtful, and pretty cutting to whoever the target is of my sarcasm. But I would rather hurt you than have my secret come out and me get hurt, right? At least that's how we think about it when we're living in denial, right? We're not living a recovery lifestyle. Okay, next one, Rodney. Absolute denial. I don't have a problem. So this, the kind of the low-hanging fruit for me, the quick one here was when Cindy used to say to me, do you think that you might have a drinking problem? I would say, no, I don't have a drinking problem. Of course I don't have a drinking problem. I just like the taste of it. It's no different than people who drink Coke, like buy the 12-pack, right? It's not a problem, right? And there were times early on in our Celebrate Recovery life that we came here and I would fly under the radar with, like, I would come here and then I would go home and sit in my garage and drink, right? But I wasn't here because I had a drinking problem. I was here because I had a problem with my kids. I was here because I had a problem with my wife. I was here because I had a problem with, right? My problem was not, I don't have a problem with drinking, right? So if I deny that I have a drinking problem, guess what I don't have to do? I don't have to address my drinking problem, right? And I don't have to address the deeper concerns and wounds that cause me to have that symptomatic reaction, which is actually the drinking. Minimizing, okay? So the kind of generic language is my problem's not that bad. Really? I mean, yeah, okay, so there's something there, but it's not that bad. And for me, this played out, we were having some marriage issues, some marriage struggles, and the idea of counseling was floated, like marriage counseling. It's like, are you kidding me? I'm not going to marriage counseling. It's not that bad. I mean, sure, we've got some struggles, but it's not that bad, right? Until it was that bad, and my belief had to change, right? I prolonged the agony, prolonged the pain, until my belief had to change because of the collision with reality that it was happening. The truth was, it was that bad, right? It had been that bad. Rationalizing. Yeah, rationalizing. So, yes, I have a problem yes, I have a problem, but I have the problem because, insert your own excuse here, right? Okay? I have the problem because, insert your excuse, and that excuse then serves to justify the problem, right? So as long as the excuse exists, I can continue to have the problem. Once the excuse goes away, then obviously the problem would go away, right? But you can't, they have to go together, right? And so here's the thing, man. There was a point in my life where this was kind of my thing. Yeah, I get that my world's a mess. I get that it's upside down. I get that there are a ton of problems. But let me tell you, if you had my kids, you'd have problems too. If you had my kids, you'd do what I'm doing, and likely you'd do it worse, because I'm just that amazing. Right? Rationalizing. Okay? Blaming. If I can prove that my problems are not my fault, I won't have to deal with them. Right? So, for me, this became about taking a real look at what I was doing, the way I was throwing my father under the bus. I am the way I am because of the way that I was raised. Right? And I didn't have to deal with any of those issues because it's my father's fault. Right? He made me this way. And clearly if I'm made this way, I don't much I can do about it. I am who I am because of what they did to me. Right? Comparing. This is comparing is tough for me to talk about because of the horrible person that I once was. So for comparing, when we do comparing, we try to show that others are worse than us. So if I can show that you're worse than me, that proves that my problem's not that bad, right? That somehow that works in your head, right? Even though you have a problem, as long as my problem is not as bad as your problem, my problem doesn't really exist, right? So when I would drink back in my drinking days, I refer to myself as a predatory drinker now. And what I mean by that was I wasn't like a sexual predator, but what I did was I looked for someone to go drinking with, or I would find a target while I was at the bar, and I would try to get them. My goal was to keep them drunker than I was, right? So that I wasn't so drunk. I'm not that drunk. I'm not that guy. I'm not that bad, right? He's passed out. I just can't drive home. God, I'm not that guy, right? And somehow we make that make sense in our head, like, because he's on the floor and I'm not, I don't have a problem. I don't have any money left. I'm puking in the bathroom, but I'm not on the floor, so I don't have a problem. I'm not that guy. Right? Comparing. So compliance is next. I'll pretend to do what you want if it'll get you to leave me alone. Thus, I don't have to admit my problem, right? I don't have to deal with my problem. Now, when I say if it will get you to leave me alone, what it really am saying is if it'll get you off my back, fine, I'll do it, right? But to what length will I do it? How honest will I do it? How authentic will the doing of it be, right? And I can tell you in a couple of examples. So the first is I have done 4 step studies, but I've started 6 step studies, right? The first 2, because the alligators were forming and attacking, and this seemed to be the thing to do to get out of there, right? Interestingly enough, both of the times that I quit the step study, I stopped when? Anybody have a guess? Inventory. When I have to do what? You can't sustain the lie. Like, I can say, yeah, I admitted that I have denial and I'm powerless. I can do that, right? But when I have to do an inventory and I have to share it with somebody, I have to put all that down on paper, I can't fly under the radar anymore. I mean, I can, but it's not as easy, right? And I increase my risk of exposure, right? So what do? I bail, right? I bail. The other thing, going back to my weight issue and my food issues and all of that, I can't tell you how many years worth of gym memberships I've paid for and how many days I've actually used, right? Right. So the gym is a incredible like vacuum of my money, and I like to say that I darken the door, but not very often. And so, but at least when I was going to the gym, then Cindy would say things like, gosh, it's nice to see you taking care of yourself. And I would be like, yes, as I was sucking down a triple latte with sugar and on the way home and she didn't know about it, right? Or, gosh, it's nice to see you taking care of yourself. And I was sneaking away at lunch and doing, Five Guys burgers and fries, give me 3 of everything, right? Because that's what denial does for me, right? As long as I can keep you buffaloed about it, right? Compliance. It looks like I'm working it, but I'm definitely not working it, right? Manipulating. I will admit my problems if you agree to solve them. So essentially this plays out like when I say, yeah, man, it's my problem. Just kidding, it's your problem. You fix it for me, right? And so, I don't know if I can even look at you and talk about this. I don't even know if you're aware of this. I didn't even know that I was aware of it until I became aware of it. But when I was, it would be about 6 years ago. It would be 6 years ago in January, just this month. It was Cindy's birthday, and we were having a birthday party, and I was drinking like a freak. And Cindy's best friend was there, and everybody had kind of passed out and was all over. And I made a pass at my wife's best friend who was at the party. Right, we were the only two left awake. And fortunately, it didn't go any further than that, but it did blow up in my world in terms of infidelity and lust and drinking and just all of these things. And in the course of going through that and trying to navigate that, at one point in that, I remember Cindy saying, I'm going to read it to you because I wrote it down. I remember Cindy saying, if I'd have been a better wife, you might not have done that. And I don't know how you get there when you are not the problem, right? I was the problem. I was the one with the problem. But somehow, in the course of navigating that, Cindy made that her problem, not my problem, her problem. And I can't tell you because I don't know. I would if I could put my finger on it, if I could textualize it for you. But in my belief system, the only way that Cindy could get to that point is because I did something to manipulate her into that belief, right? And I'd love to tell you that what the language was. And maybe the behaviors and the manipulation didn't even happen in that moment. Maybe they were earlier in our relationship. I don't know. But what I do know is this. I'm guilty of manipulation. And it can't be more clear than in that example. And if it's clear in that example, it's got to be playing out in lots of other places in my life too. I just got to believe that. And man, I don't want that. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to do that to my wife. I just don't want to be that guy. Okay. Whew. That was hard. Flight into health. So essentially, Flight into Health says, hey, when I feel better, that means I'm cured, right? So, as soon as I get this recovery thing, as soon as I get recovery, as soon as I get fixed, can't wait because I can start drinking again. As soon as I hit my target weight, tacos. Tacos aren't my thing. What I'm in denial about is the fact that I have an innate ability to be unsatisfied with things of the world. There aren't enough tacos to fix what I'm broken. There aren't enough enchiladas to fix how I'm broken. Cheesecake Factory can't make enough cheesecakes to fix how I'm broken. Adolf Coors can't pump enough beer out of his factory to fix how I'm broken. Because I have an inability to be satisfied. That's the issue that I need to step out of denial about, right? And so when we do this flee to health thing, we start looking for, when's the magic bullet happen so I can go back to doing the secret, right? So I'll do it long enough until, and then when I'll go back. Okay? Recovery by fear. So, being afraid of my problems will make them go away. This is a huge piece in my life, a huge problem, a huge issue for me, a huge strategy for me. And I know that it's happening because procrastination plays out, right? So as an example, I had an income tax return that was a year and a half late getting turned in because I made a mistake on the computer, and I was afraid to open it back up and try and fix it. I just thought, and I just, in my head, I somehow figured that if I ignored it long enough because it was so scary, that somehow it would get fixed. FYI, the IRS, they don't forget. They don't care. Like, they don't care how afraid you are. They will make you more afraid. And so your problems won't go away just because you're afraid. Okay? Strategic hopelessness. Because nothing works, I don't have to try. So you've heard me talk about our relationship, and particularly my relationship with my stepsons, and my wife's desire for that to be different, and honestly, for my desire for it to be different. But here's the thing, man. I have tried, and I have tried, and I have tried, and there is nothing that I can do to make them interact with me like I would like them to. So I'll just quit, because that'll make it happen. Strategic hopelessness. I'll just quit. Right? I don't have to try, because nothing's going to work anyway. I remember my first run at recovery, and again, strategic hopelessness. My grandfather was an alcoholic, and he could never get recovery. He went to rehab like 10 million times, but he always got drunk right afterwards, right? And so why bother? Because it's genetic. It's my family tree. It's how we do. So why even bother? It's hopeless. I can't crawl out of this hole. That's a lie, by the way. You can crawl out of the hole. Democratic disease state. What? Oh, okay. So democratic disease state. I have the right to destroy myself, and no one has the right to stop me. Okay? I do what I want to do, right? And so if that's your mantra, we'll meet you at the Pride group right after. Okay? I have the right to destroy myself however I see fit, and you have no right to intervene in my life. It's my body. I'll do with it what I want. And if it wants a T-bone steak and an enchilada and a 12-pack of beer all in one setting, that's what it's going to get. Because it's my life. If I want to, take whatever risk, it's my life. I'll do it. And then finally, religious denial. Jesus died on the cross for my sins, but he didn't anticipate how bad I was going to be. Ain't no chance for me, because he didn't know. That's a lie. He says, I'm forgiven, but I still need to do something to balance the scorecard, right? Adam loans me $1. I was brought up that I owe him $1. Adam says, you don't owe me $1. Forget it, man. I got you. I'm like, thanks, man. I heard you. But I still know in my back of my head, I'm not even until I get $1 back to him in some way, whether it be $1 or some sort of help or volunteer or service or buy his kid an ice cream cone or whatever. Until I balance that scorecard, no bueno, right? Jesus died for my sins. He says I'm forgiven, but I got to do something. For me, my hang-up in recovery was I've got to hurt as bad as I hurt other people in order to accept forgiveness. I have to hurt myself that bad. Happened in the Bible, so I'm good, man. Like, if it happened in the Bible, it's good, right? This was my entry, my excuse for my relapse, right? I had been in recovery. I'd quit drinking through AA. Then my spiritual walk got really strong. And you know what they do in the Bible? They drink wine. So you know what? I'm going to drink some wine too, because I'm like the Bible guys. One problem with that. I have an innate ability to be unsatisfied, and one wine is not enough. Right? Okay. So, do you have anything that you'd like to add, or would you just along for the... Okay, so I think we're probably running out of time. I'm guessing we're going to be in trouble if I don't. Oh, yeah, we're way out of trouble.
Can I talk?
I got to quit.
Hello?
We got to quit.
Have to quit?
Yeah, we got to quit. Say one thing, but make it short, quick. Quick, and then we'll let
Do
it
I have
go.
a mic? I hope you understand. I have the most amazing husband on the planet. For him to I have nothing to say. I can't identify any of your denial traits because you've owned them all. You've come clean. You've done this to some extent just with the two of us in the room, but to do it here, and I think the reason I'm up here tonight is to tell you that this is who he really is. This is who I have when there's nobody else in the room. I tell my girls that being a sponsor is one of the best things that's ever happened to me, because I get a front row seat to God's amazing transforming power. I see what he does to people when they sell out and they go all in. And if he told us in the Bible to eat dirt, they would do it. I see that with my sponsees, and I see that in my husband, because I remember how he used to be. I remember he was a good man before we came into these doors. He was a good man. But for him to sell out to God and to go all in with God and to chase after him and to listen to what God says to him and do it, that takes a certain part of the anatomy that I'm not going to tell you about, but you know what I'm talking about. That takes courage. That takes chutzpah. And he's mine. He is mine. I am so blessed. I am so blessed.
I am powerless. My life was unmanageable. My life was a mess. It was chaos. But I've chosen to chase after God and the promises. And that's work, and it's effort. And I'm not there. And I make mistakes. And I fall back. But I'm better than I was. And as you go to group tonight, let that be your goal, to leave the group tonight better than you were when you walked in. So just to wrap this up and to give you another great illustration of denial, I'm sorry to keep you late tonight, but it's the fault of the people who told me that my message sucked. So, we love you, family. Go to groups on your way. Can we get the serenity prayer real quick? Rodney? God, need the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, the wisdom to know the difference, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace, taking as Jesus did, sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever and in the next. Amen, amen, and amen. We love you. Have a great group.